Good afternoon, everybody. It's very nice to be here. Thanks for the invite, Jane. And I promise for everybody here who missed breakfast like me, I'll have you out early for lunch, okay? I just want to introduce my colleague, David, at the back. David is the innovation pioneer for, put your hand up, David. He's the innovation pioneer for Rehab Group. It's his job to spark and nurture and even foment innovation within the group, so he's welcome to support me here. So I just want to give you a brief overview of PERSAV, and then if you have any questions, you can fire ahead. Where did it came from? It came from a project in Donegal, which was designed to support 101 young adults with autistic tendencies. And it came accidentally out of it because we found that 25% of the funding for the project had to be diverted to transport training because the people were experiencing so many common difficulties almost on a daily basis with trying to get to the centre just from their own homes through using even public and private transport. So it became a huge issue. For an organisation with over 50 centres spread across the country focused on delivering services to people with impairments, this became an issue because if they can't get to the centres, what's the point in having them? So we started looking at what the solutions were out there was. PERSAV is short for Personal Sat Nav, which I hope explains the basic concept. The idea is that it helps people, anyone, to travel safely and independently. There's no need for any new technology. That was one of our primary design decisions. It can use any smartphone. We have a prototype that works on Android and iPhone. It piggybacks on existing mapping apps. And I have an email from Google that promises me that I don't have to pay them for the privilege ever again. So we're going to pursue that with them. It reduces complexity. One of the big issues for a lot of the people with existing systems is that you have this wonderfully rich contextual map of everything that's happening in your environment, but actually that very thing that Google value and other mapping apps value, that rich information is the very thing that creates difficulties for people with, for example, an acquired brain injury. So we are reducing the complexity, and we're looking at developing a suite of multi-format communication tools so that not only will it use personalized text or visuals, but it might also use audio and even haptic signals to enable people with a variety of different disabilities or even comorbid conditions to travel safely. The prototype was tested thanks to money from Smart Dublin, and it works. There are a few bugs, but it works. One of the bugs, believe it or not, was that the system was too accurate, which was a bit of a shock, but there you go. So there you go. So what does it do? Well, the first thing it does is it offers informational supports, and this is information that people can drop onto the map that shows there's a known problem in a given location. So it can be permanent or temporary. It might be something like tree roots. It might be construction works. It might be that for someone with autistic tendencies that a route is particularly busy at certain times of the day and therefore to be avoided. It might be a junction is particularly complex and it's difficult to find the right exit from it. If you're, for example, someone with a brain injury. So these are different depending on the impairments that people may have. The Institute of Technology in Sligo have been fantastic supporters of this, and they're designing a suite of symbols for us for the next version of the app. And the information is shared to benefit all PERSAV users, typically on the basis that people with the same profile will have the same informational needs. The idea is that it creates a public accessibility map to aid anyone who's interested in this space, planners, councils, architects, and obviously people with disabilities, and that the information is delivered and maintained by the people who have the main interest in it, namely the users. So it's kind of crowdsourcing of the information. Second piece is far more important in some respects. It's about the instructional supports. So this is supports that are dropped onto the map at waypoints along the route as you record your journey. And this is either done by the person or by their safety team, and I'll explain that in a second. It allows you to build a safety team. These are people who you know and trust. It may or may not include people from service provision agencies like Rehab or the HSE. But basically, what it allows you to do is select a recorded route and then It tracks your progress on the route using GPS. It triggers the supports that you need, that you've put into the route yourself. And it warns you and sends graded alerts to your safety team if you deviate off the route or if you're delayed on the route. And this can work across any number of things. We've tried it on buses and trains and cars, so it'll be able to do things like warn you in advance that you need to get off at the next stop. There's a huge amount of flexibility available to this. Final piece of the puzzle is it's got a Help Now button that appears on every single screen, and that allows you to contact your safety team. It's designed to fail safe wherever possible. We've done quite a lot of work on this. It responds to certain identified issues. In fact, one of the students in IT Sligo came up with a solution around sharing the battery life between phones so that you know whether or not the user, their battery life is running low. It manages the alerts in a specific way that we've tested. It allows the social care provider to provide a backstop so that if anybody on the safety team, if nobody on the safety team were available in some extraordinary circumstance, that the social care provider would be able to offer this. And it upgrades the alerts if there's a lack of response. So it starts to escalate the alerts to allow for a response. That's an illustration of some of the work that the design team in Sligo are doing for us. It's a simplified graphic user interface, as I mentioned. It'll have W3C accessibility standards and universal design built in. We hope to have inbound APIs for popular third-party apps people are already using, and there'll be a new suite of multi-format symbols and communication tools. In the planned version of PERSEF 2.0, we wanted to create a dedicated app for the safety team members. We want a new app for social care providers where potentially they could support multiple people at the same time. So for example, the current arrangement is that you'd have a personal assistant. And as you can imagine, that is a very expensive service to provide because it's one-to-one. Whereas in an urban environment, certainly, you may have a situation where PERSEF would enable the delivery or provision of services to people where you might be looking after 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 people at the same time. So there's huge implications here for social care, for long-term care, and for enabling people to have a much higher quality of life. Payment options, we're going to put in payment options for strategic reasons. We hope to include an API for public transport. One of the wonderful things about doing this in Ireland is that we have one national transport authority. We're in discussions with the CEO of Helio Mari, which is the ABI specialist agency in the Netherlands, and they have 14 transport authorities to try and deal with. So we're very lucky in some respects to be able to do this here. We hope to have further discussions with a certain team not a million miles from here about running replicable trials. And the final point is one of the other design parameters is that we've absolutely minimized the amount of text because within the Smart Dublin project, one of their key parameters was that there's 190 languages now spoken in Dublin, and they really didn't want apps that needed localizing into 190 languages. So we've tried to do that. Why focus on ABI? There's over 1 million people diagnosed with an acquired brain injury every year in the English-speaking world alone. In Ireland, that's more than 10,000 people every single year. That doesn't include stroke survivors like Niamh. That's just acquired brain injury. 30% of them are traumatic, so the likes of industrial accidents, road traffic accidents, things like that. Most of the people are under 34 years of age. There's a sizable number of them are more male than female. That means most of them are familiar with using smartphones. They're digital citizens, so they're going to find this very easy to use. Won't be suitable for everybody. We're not expecting that it will, but it will transform the lives of people and allow them rebuild their lives in their communities, because transport is actually the key. It unlocks everything else. First cohort is acquired brain injury. It's suitable for a host of other high support cohorts. Obviously, we were looking at it initially from the point of view of autism. We've since had all sorts of people come knocking on our doors, including people looking at dementia, looking at stroke survivors, looking at a host of other groups. The business model is very simple. We want to use a low weekly rental. to enable private adoption. We want to drive clinical trials to look at public adoption. We're looking at multiple hybrid business models. And we already have expert ABI partners lined up from around the world. I was talking to the CEO of Brain Injury Canada last week, and she's asking me, when are you going to have this ready for us? They've already got the funding for the trials. So that's the level of interest there is in this around the world. It's also, and this is something for the longer term, it also has the potential to become a platform for in-community service delivery, and this is really where it has the potential to transform social care, and that's something that we're very interested in. So there you go. Thank you very much.